All phones off. I just heard a ping there. Good morning, members. Welcome to the Enterprising Services Subcommittee. Item 1, SEDERUNT and apologies.
Thank you, Chair. We've got 10 members present this morning. 2 apologies, one from Malcolm Johnston and the other from Doug Fairbairn. And we've got Councillor Gilroy here substituting for Malcolm Johnston.
Thanks. Declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Item 3 is the Enterprising Services Revenue Budget OUTTURN report for 2017-18. A little bit of background behind this. I think it was raised on the 13th of July EEI that really this report should come back to Enterprising Services for members to get a little bit more detail on a couple of the main variances between budget and actual. So this report will provide members with an overview of performance against budget for Enterprising Services for the financial year 2017-18 and details of the key issues that have contributed to the position reported. Now, previous monitoring reports presented to this subcommittee on September 2017 identified that there was a risk of net expenditure exceeding the agreed budget level by 242,000. Then we revised this downwards in the monitoring reports presented to the November and January meetings of EEI committee. But further issues have emerged, however, during the last 2 months of the last financial year, and in particular in relation to the building maintenance and roads maintenance services that increased the overall 2017-18 budget shortfall. Now, as reflected in the report, which a lot of the appendices have been taken from the EEI report, the key contributors to the overall 2017-18 overspend position was indeed building and roads maintenance services. Now, the Council have agreed that a thorough review has been undertaken through EEI management team with support of finance and procurement, with Paul Garrett leading that up, to ensure that the detailed budgets are realistic for the new business year and to ensure the avoidance of a reoccurrence of overspending. Now, the details of this review will be presented to the next meeting of Policy Resources, and it will also be taken to a future meeting of the EEI committee. Now, we do have the report and the officers from Roads and Building Services, they're in attendance today to actually answer some questions. But I think as well, really to explain in more detail some of the issues relating to particularly buildings and roads maintenance services, why we're in the position that we are. So over to the author of the report and the 2 members.
Good morning, Chair. Through you, Chair. Basically, the report is primarily what has already been received by the EEI committee in July. It just goes through in a slightly more detail the elements. Appendix 1 shows the actual breakdown of both enterprising and the enterprising funded trading services and the external trading, the trading services. As you can see, within the budgeted services, there was actually a surplus produced. There's actually some quite good news stories there in terms of print unit and caravan sites, both of which were transferred into the enterprising over the last couple of years, and both have returned balanced budgets. It is the trading side, and as you can see, it's the performance of the building maintenance and roads maintenance that are the difficulty, and those are subject to the 2 appendix to show the action plans that are in place, the reasons for, and what we're doing going forward. Any questions, basically?
Can I ask at this point, though, if Stephen or Mike would like to, just go into a little bit more detail on some of the variances?
Through you, Chair. If you look at the report on Appendix 2 and basing that on the figures that are shown there for year 16-17 against the figures that are shown there for year 17-18, it's quite clear that the big variances were the capital projects and external repairs and maintenance. The capital projects are projects that building maintenance carries out basically on behalf of the council. And further in the report, you'll note that there was 2 major projects there that didn't come to fruition, which has taken the variance there on the board. The external repairs and maintenance variance has come about from a number of items, one being the police and fire service have centralised their repairs and maintenance contract, which building services carried out for them. At the time when that was going on, we were in negotiations with 3 of the 7 major contractors who were bidding for the work, with a view to carry out the works within the region on their behalf. Unfortunately, one of the contractors who won it wasn't one of the 3 who we were bidding with, and they no longer wanted to have discussions with us. One of the other issues was we had an invoice which we had processed through to work we had carried out within the college. That invoice had actually been processed twice, so the cost had been taken against last year, and the income had been taken against last year, and we thought that prudent to reverse that to make sure that the books were balanced in an appropriate manner. I'm happy to take any questions on the report that's there.
Mike?
Thanks, Chair. From the roads maintenance trading side, there was 2 main issues that have been highlighted in the appendix. First one was the latter 3 months of the Scotland Transerve contract, and in particular activities relating to Category 1 defects and winter maintenance. And the pricing mechanisms that were in the contract from the start, and the impact of the really bad winter weather between predominantly sort of November through to the end of March, and the amount of money that we were able to recover from Transerve in relation to that, and the costs that we actually encountered to comply with the contract, had a significant impact on the trading element. Also, the second part really goes back to the service review in 2013-14 that took place. And there was, at that particular time, within what I would term the private sector, there was quite significant opportunities for roads trading to be involved with. And we set out aspirational targets based on the current market that we were involved with, and certainly the indication from the private sector that there were opportunities that were available. And we set out within the commercial development plan what we felt were reasonable targets based on the current market. And what happened was that the market did change, and some of the aspirational stuff that we wanted to get to never came forth. So that's the 2 main elements that's had the impact on the roads trading.
Thanks, Mike. Just for members to note as well, just that this correction on page 2 of 12 at the very top, it says that there's 3 key contributors. That should actually read 2. Archie?
Thanks very much, Chair. Obviously, there's a lot of work going on between the EE&I and the finance side of things to look at where we're heading with these budgets and tradings. So I think in 2013 there was some unrealistic targets being set. So what steps are being taken to ensure that realistic targets are going to be set in the future, along with finance, to make sure that we can come in on or near budget?
Right.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Picking up on Councillor Dryburgh's point, that is part of the review that is ongoing with the Section 95 officer, clearly looking at what has gone, particularly the changes in the market environment within Dumfries and Galloway, and the opportunities that had existed that have either come or gone due to factors out with our control, And all of that will be encompassed within the Finance Officer's report that will come forward to the P&R, setting realistic targets that the services have been fully engaged with regarding the deliverability and the opportunities associated with the works that we carry out. So that will come forward in September when the Section 95 officer presents that report to P&R, and then will in turn come to EEI in due course.
You come back, Archie, just as well, and I think that will be reflected in the revised commercial development plan as well. Just before I bring Archie back in though as well, obviously we're hoping that the report that goes to P&R and goes to EEI will actually make life a lot easier and make forecasting a lot better. But really, as the chair and vice chair of this sub, I just want to give you a personal guarantee that for the next financial year and after that we will not be cancelling any enterprise sub meetings. We will be having a regular report on budget monitoring at every one of those, and that gives members of this sub the opportunity to actually scrutinise in more detail and to get more answers, so we can actually monitor on an ongoing basis the performance of enterprise and DG.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, obviously in the trading side of things, the trunk roads was one area where we were getting income into that side of things, and we realised that the issue of the legal recourse that didn't come in. So taking the trunk roads out of the equation, because we're no longer applying for those type of things, what are the opportunities in the future then for roads to potentially get some income?
Is that one you want to take, Mike?
Thanks, Chair. I think, currently at the moment, and historically, we've been involved with contracts around public utility operations, and that has worked, reasonably well for us. And what we've been able to do within the last sort of 3 or 4 months is actually renew contracts with them based on revised schedules, revised pricing that certainly will bear fruit for us in the future. And these are contracts that are sort of 3 and 4 years in length. And there's a surety in there that with the workflow coming through, that we'll be able to make a rate of return on these contracts.
Ronnie, do you want to add something there?
Can I just add to that? The market environment now has fundamentally changed. If you think back to the old DG First, and prior to that, there was a completely different market of opportunity within Dumfries and Galloway. We're very conscious of that. Local economy has changed, and the opportunities in some respect are shrinking, and Mike has touched on some of the key elements that we are promoting. There is a lot less private development build that we can interact with, and there is a lot less other inward investment from organisations that local authorities can tap into. So the market has shrunk from when we had the heydays of some years ago, but we are still proactively, and the team are very proactive in looking at what opportunities are out there to see what we can actively participate that is beneficial to both the authority and the economy of Dumfries and Galloway.
I think you touched on it earlier as well, Ronnie, with regards to, if you look at the bottom of page 10, but some of the targets that we were trying to achieve in 2017-18, like the new housing developments and the wind farm developments, they basically were 5-year targets that were set. So, realistically, could we have achieved those? Hopefully the part of the review will actually be able to actually readjust, and when we know that we're not going to meet these targets.
Through you, Chair, absolutely. And at the time when these numbers were created, a lot of it is very speculative, based around the indications of business development opportunities that would be coming from the organisations we were speaking with. And obviously they face similar challenges around finances as we as a local authority do, and they've obviously contracted inwardly and may not have been spending the money the way they had anticipated or had forecast that to come towards us. So again, it's something that has to be looked at through the organisation and through our committee in a very fluid way to ensure that we capture what is realistic and rather than being overly aspirational around the numbers that we have.
Katie, then Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this report is for noting, but I'm disappointed that there's not more detail. We have officers here, and you've all added extra information, but it would have been really useful to have much more detailed information in this report. I am heartened by the Chair confirming that no more meetings are going to be cancelled, especially when I look through the papers, which, if I have a look on, let's have a look here, page 8, that mentions that the reduction in income was not apparent till the latter part of the financial year, but yet we had in December a meeting cancelled and in June cancelled. I am baffled as to why we didn't have a meeting with that information coming towards us, so I would like an explanation as to why that information wasn't brought to us. In terms of moving forward, there's no information about this year's budget. They're talking about what we're going to do, and we've got details of last year's budget, but there's nothing set for this year at all. Are we on track? What's the information coming forward? And obviously we don't have any trends, and I understand that it's a new subcommittee and things have changed, and Ronnie mentioned himself that it's very fluid, but it's still useful to have the information so we can actually track that. Just a couple of other points. There was mention, Caroline, about the print department making money, but yet in Appendix 2 it would appear that it didn't make money. Could you just explain where the extra surplus came from, because the figure here actually shows a variance that we actually lost money through the print unit. And also, could somebody just explain to me Appendix 1, because we've got a published budget, the adjusted budget, the revised budget, and the actual spending. So when was the budget published, and when was it adjusted, and how was it adjusted? Because that information, again, is not clear. Obviously, this is a fairly new committee. I'm still fairly new getting my head around this, so it would be useful to have extra information, please.
Caroline might be able to pick up most of those points, but just on your first point, Katie, I think the reason why this subcommittee didn't scrutinise financial performance is that prior to that it was agreed that it would be done at EEI. So that's something that obviously, if we need to change it through recommendation going forward, then we can do that today. But I think that's maybe the reason why we didn't have reports to the sub. But
Sorry, did you say we're not here to scrutinise the financial?
No, I'm saying the reason was that the enterprise and sub, along with other parts of EI, was all to be scrutinised at the EI. That's where the original agreement was. My understanding is, I wasn't on the last EEI, but all the financial performance was at the parent committee, which, rightly or wrongly, that's what was agreed. But what we're saying now is that we're going to get regular reports, but also we're going to get more narrative as well, which will explain some of the variances, that happen throughout the year. But Caroline, do you want to pick up most of the other points?
Yes, through you, Chair. First of all, the budget, because of the exercise to do with the Section 95 officer reviewing and revising all the budgets to make sure that they're absolutely correct, there has been a delay in publishing the budget. That will come to the next DEI committee. So it is in place as a draft, but it needs to be finalised, and that will happen. That's why there's a delay. Usually you would have had a monitoring report for the first quarter, but that's because of the particular circumstances of this year. We will provide more detail in those reports coming forward. With regard to your the print unit, yes, this is actually a budgeted service insofar as the core costs of that service, the staff, are a central support service and are allocated on the basis of central support. But the actual printing, the charge for the printing, the paper and the printing is allocated out. What happened was that this was transferred into enterprising services with a £60,000 deficit on it. So it had an overspend of £60,000 when it was transferred in due to the action of the enterprising services. That has now reduced to an overspend of 2,000 this year, and it's likely to, it's predicted for next year to actually produce a small surplus, or a not a surplus, but an underspend. So what I'm saying is there are some good news stories within this particular outturn, which shouldn't be swamped by the bad news, completely swamped by the bad news of the building maintenance and road maintenance. The other thing is the caravan sites, as you can see, has increased its underspend. It actually has a genuine surplus, and it has increased, and it's likely to increase for the coming year. So that's the print unit. Sorry, is there any other questions? Sorry.
It's just, it would have been useful to have that information in the report. It goes back to my initial, that there's no details, or there's very little details in this, and it's very difficult as an elected member to scrutinise when we've not been provided with the full details. But thank
Ronnie,
you.
do you want to come in here?
Chair, if I can through you, picking up certainly on Councillor Hagman's point, and I have made a suggestion to the Chair that what we would like to start doing, we accept that our finance reports go to the parent committee. However, we would like to have these on a quarterly basis coming to this committee for fuller scrutiny. We would also like to bring in line with, and is being worked on, the further and greater in-depth detail that can allow members that further scrutiny of the activities in relation to performance and activities we do. And if there is clearly no commercial business, dare I say, that we would still be coming forward either on a quarterly basis with a finance report and or a performance report giving detail and give members the opportunity to ask the questions that perhaps they don't get the opportunity to do on a day-to-day basis with the team.
And we've got that recorded. That'll probably be another recommendation in this report if members agree. Graham?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm delighted that we're getting a commitment that the reports will be coming on a regular basis, which is badly needed. The speculative way that some of these figures have been put on paper in the past, it reminds me of somebody sticking a finger in the air and seeing which way the wind was blowing. And hopefully we're going to get more accurate speculation in the future. But what I'm really go back to Mike, was I right in assuming that you suggested to the committee here that you had done work for Scottish Transserve, or Transserve Scotland, whatever they're called, and didn't get paid for it? And if that is the case, what action are we taking to get that money back from them? Because you don't work for somebody and not get paid, and this is the Scottish Government is the back of this, so we need to be pursuing it.
Yeah. Just before I bring Mike in, just on the first point that you made though as well, these figures weren't hidden. These figures were reported to the parent committee, so it's not as if we didn't see the figures. It's just that probably what we're saying now is at the parent committee we didn't have enough time, or there wasn't enough time set aside to scrutinise them properly. That's why we're bringing it to the sub from now on. Mike, do you want to come in on this?
Chair, if I can, just on that point, I'm very mindful of some of the matters commercial sensitivity. There are certain activities within the previous contractual arrangements where it, I think the term under recovery rather than not getting paid would be a term I would use, and I would perhaps seek advice from the chair of what we wish to discuss on that matter.
In relation to
any commercial activity that's been done with a party we're still in discussions with.
Governance. So, I mean, if we're happy to discuss it in committee, certain parts of it to discuss that we can, without actually.
Well, obviously, there's an issue going on at the moment that may have a detrimental effect if we raise this in committee, because they're obviously seeking finance back from Transco. I would suggest that if Ronnie talked offline to Graham, then that may be a way of doing it.
Either that, or we can maybe have a a note, a confidential note to members? Is that maybe the best way to treat it? You happy with that, Graham?
Yeah, I didn't bring the subject up. It was Mike that mentioned it or insinuated that in his preamble. Yes, I would welcome some information on it without going into too much commercial. I just, you know, we need to be making sure we get paid for what we do. I mean, I appreciate it was a bad winter, but, you know, we need to be making sure that we get our pound of flesh.
We'll get the relevant detail that can be sent out to members confidentially.
Thank you, Chair. I think it was over a year ago that I offered the opinion that this enterprising services programme should be discontinued. I don't see anything here that's changed my mind. I think market fluctuations, unexpected overspends, etc., they're all part of being in a commercial enterprise. I don't take the view that the council should be in an entrepreneurial position. I'm not sure that the public would support that anyway. There is an element, I think Graham and I said that we would support, which is this of bidding for contract, enabling, I don't know, smaller enterprises within Dumfries and Galloway to bid for contracts, but whether we ourselves should be competing in the commercial environment as a provider, it just seemed to me there seemed to be fraught in more ways than just the opportunity to lose money. But I don't want to go into that in great detail at the moment. It's just indicative of the problems we've got. So measures such as delaying filling vacancies, I mean, it just all smacks of a failing business to me. Last year you told me it's a matter for the full council. It was decided before my time that this was the sort of thing we should be entering into. And I wondered, given that the figures are not good, whether it was a time when it should be brought again to the full council, that the new full council could consider in principle whether this was a good idea. There may be very good arguments, but Councillor Driver may bring excellent arguments that can sway my opinion why we should continue to flog what ostensibly looks like a dead horse to me. Thank you.
I think every member's entitled to their opinion, David, and you expressed that a year ago, and hopefully you will have made some inroads with your own group if you're still part of the Conservative group. So really that is the route to take it. So if you can get that support from your group, then maybe bring it to full council, but you won't be getting any of us actually bringing that idea towards that. So if you work within your own group and then bring it to full council, then it's happy to be debated.
I think Graham and I were here alone representing the council, Conservatives, when we expressed the opinion there seemed to be two elements, two sides to enterprising services. One, the ability to put together a package and a bid on behalf of local businesses, and the other as a provider of services ourselves, and a vehicle that would compete for catering in Carlisle, I think was mentioned a year ago, etc. And it's probably, and I think we would like to differentiate between those two halves. So certainly we did a few months ago. I'm not sure what the mechanics are bringing this to full council, but of course we can talk within the group about that. But I thought it was
by all means do that,
position that we uttered several months ago. Okay.
By all means, take that up with your group, and either you want to put a motion today or you want to wait and discuss it at full council, then it's within your right to do that.
We can't make a motion. It's just on the clarification. When I tried to move a motion over a year ago, that wasn't possible. Is that possible within the? No.
You could actually propose a motion, but it probably wouldn't. You probably would need a further report, and you would need a seconder, but it probably wouldn't be competent because you would need the information before you could actually change the enterprising.
Okay, thank you.
That wouldn't be within the remit of this committee, so wouldn't be competent.
Okay, I've got Jim next. I've got Rose after Jim.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at page 8, the third bullet point down from the top, it refers to amendments to the standard of void properties let by registered social landlords. Has there been a reduction in the standard of maintenance for these properties, or is it simply the fact that there are fewer void properties?
Okay, Stephen, do you want to answer that?
Through you, Chair. The number of void properties that we have carried out on behalf of organisations that we work for have been the same. There has been a reduction in the level of works that are carried out to the void properties through enterprising services.
So I take it from that response that the standard of maintenance has been reduced.
I can only comment on what enterprising services carries out for those organisations. How they carry out works on their properties, they utilise a multitude of companies, but the level of works that have come through enterprising services has reduced.
Thank you.
Go on.
Jim, you mentioned the standard of maintenance. Do you mean the number of amounts of maintenance that's carried out in houses? Because I think the standard of maintenance has to be a certain standard anyway, within council and out with, but do you mean the numbers rather as...
Chair, I'm querying the actual requirements to be carried out on void properties.
Yeah. Bring Ronnie in on this one.
Thank you, Chair, through you. As my officer quite rightly says, we are given an instruction to carry out the activity by whichever landlord that we are working for. They will set a required level of specification. We will deliver that to the highest of possible standards, delivered by not only our own staff but our subcontractors that work for us. But that is based on the organisation that we work for's requirement. So if they stipulate they want all the walls painted or the new skirtings fitted, or we will do that to their requirement. I'm very mindful that they have budgetary constraints as well, and that's where they will be looking to make any savings. But in the delivery of the service, it will be delivered to the best of D&G's provision and those of our contractors that work for us.
Come back, Jim.
Please, Chair. So I assume from that statement that the requirements stipulated have changed.
Each property, Chair, will require a different level of activity, so they stipulate what that activity will be. So you could perceive that as a change, but that is down to the owners of those properties stipulating what they wish done, and that may well be, in their perspective, a change, but that's out with our control.
Ros, then Patsy.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking on page 2, 4.7, and it's talking about delays and non-filling of vacancies. And I'm just wondering, I know that in that point is saying that it's helped to offset the cost and the overspend. However, I'm concerned that with the lack of vacancies and competent staff and happy staff and inducted staff, that puts an extra stress on the services to counterbalance what we're looking at today. The second, so I just want to know how we're getting on with those delayed and empty vacancies. The second point I want to make is I'm very interested to see that there's an underspend on school meals. And for me, that sounds a little odd in the climate at the moment where we are trying to promote school meals, and we've just had a whole anti-hunger project over the summer. So just to comment on that, please.
If Ronnie will take the first one, I think Caroline will take the second, yep.
In relation to vacancy management, we're very, being at the sharp end of service delivery, we're very conscious that key personnel are required, and I am a member of the Workforce Transition Board as well, so any vacancies that we have, we are looking at having those targeted and opportunities for new people to come in, particularly around those activities that are joiners, painters, etc., that we need to deliver the work. So we manage every vacancy very closely, but any savings have been aligned to this to give us that advantage. But we are certainly looking at every post so that we do not excel any other undue pressure onto the rest of the team to deliver that service.
Thanks, Ronnie. And the second point, Caroline?
Yes, Chair. Basically, the underspend in school meals is a success story insofar as it's generated by the additional income that we've actually received. We set targets for pupil meal uptake and the amount of income that is provided. That actually exceeded the target that we had set. So in effect, the take-up rate for paid school meals was higher than we'd been anticipating. So that's why one of the parts of the underspend. The other actually is the holiday, the initiatives that have gone on. We've actually, we received funding for it, and because of the way in which it was managed, have utilised some of our existing resources more effectively, and therefore actually gained a bit of budget in that respect. So in actual fact, far from kind of showing a declining service, this actually shows a school meal service that is making progress.
Patsy?
Thank you. It was a bit of deja vu when I got these papers to step in here to substitute today, and I'm kind of disappointed to see that the reporting is still the same as it's always been, with the numbers with the outrun statements and the outrun analysis. I'm very heartened that you're going to have all your meetings with financial reporting. I think that's really important, and also that there has to be improved narrative along with that financial reporting, because it does help. Because we've talked a lot this up today, and it could easily have been in the report without all the questions. But please, am I the only, I'm not accountant in any shape or form, but if you go to page 5 with the OUTTURN statement, in that, if I read that as just Joe Public, I take a minus to be a minus, but a minus is a plus. I'm not sure why, and I think it's confusing, and I think it's unnecessary to be so confusing. If you then go to page 1, and you see underspend in brackets, that is good. If you go to page 7, in the brackets, it's a deficit, which is not good. Why are the brackets different, meaning different things in different places? I just think in order to get to grips with where enterprising D&G has got, you have got to have simplified accounting. I think this is confusing, and I think Joe Public out there who have every right to read these papers and look at them and see how this part of the council is going, will come away with a completely different idea of what's going on than is actually going on, because of it's the plus and the minus. I don't get it. I really don't understand it. You look at the page 5 at the bottom, you would think total enterprising service was making a profit of £612,998. If you just read it. I mean, if you go into the detail, you see that that's not the case. But if you just look at the bottom line, you would say, gosh, that's well done. But that's not actually what's happening. And I would suggest that perhaps a look at how you deliver your accounts to make it easy to understand and to follow would be a really, really good step forward. I think it might be a mountain too high to climb, mind you.
I totally agree, Patsy, and I think it's a corporate, correct me if I'm wrong, Caroline, but this is it's a corporate reporting culture that maybe if we can feed that back up, though, because obviously Paul Garrett's looking at a whole range of measures and, to improve, how the forecast, but, actually playing English and understanding the reports is one way of doing that as well. In defence of the report, because when I first seen the report, it's not much different from the EEI report, and to be fair, it's because there was a request made by some of the members. We've had the recess, there is the reports going to policy and resources, so really there's not been enough time to get the kind of report I would like to see, and this committee would probably like to see going forward. So, this will be different in the future, but I think it's just a timing issue with that. Caroline, do you want to add anything on that? I think it's something that can maybe be raised.
Actually, Chair, you just answered my point that because of the restructure, the review exercise, and the timing of that report. We've done one for EEI General Committee, but not one for Enterprising Sub. It wasn't done in the way that we'd expected it to be done. Yes, we are experimenting with different ways of trying to display these accounts. I've been working together with the Section 95 officer to do that. Unfortunately, they just haven't managed to materialise because of the exercises that we've been doing.
So I hope to see in the September report it's bracket or not to bracket. So let's make things a little bit more simple.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for letting me come back again. Obviously, I'm really pleased that Ross brought up about the school meals, because I brought this subject up last year where we had a deficit, and while I understand the explanation, I don't feel that we should have a deficit at all. I think that money should have been reinvested in our school meals and our nutrition. I do not believe it's the highest, not a deficit, a surplus, sorry, it's the highest saving, and at the very start of this committee, it wasn't highlighted as a good news story. The print unit was a good news story, the caravan site, but the school meals wasn't highlighted as a good news story. So even though it would appear to be, the officers didn't point us in that direction. So actually, I would make the request that I made last year, and I'll make it again, that Councillor Surtees has highlighted. We should not have any money left over in our school meals budget. We should be using that to invest, I believe, in the future of our children, because the nutrition of our children is one of the most important things that we can help for the future generations within this local authority. There's a couple, yes.
Can I just respond on that one? Alan's not here, unfortunately, but I do know that maybe part of that reason is due to Alan's diligence as well. But what we probably do need is a report, either a future report or just a written, explanation as to why we have got that deficit and the things that maybe been done proactively that have reduced that. And it's not a case of that we're saving money because it's maybe because with economies of scale or the way that things are ordered, and the reason that's why we're below budget. So, but I think if we can get an answer to that, that would probably be better.
I do appreciate that, and certainly it goes back to my very beginning point at the start of the committee. There's not enough detail in these reports. We can't possibly do the jobs properly because we're not given the details. On that same point, where are we with our commercial plan? Because obviously we were looking at it previously. It went to EEI, it's then gone back. There's reference to the commercial plan of 2014, but there's no reference to the new plan, where we are or what's happening with that. And just on my final point, and then I'll let people come back, Caroline, you mentioned about trying to work with the figures and making it clear with the Section 95 officer. Could I make a suggestion that we invite members of the public to work with it? Because actually, speaking to officers and speaking into that echo chamber is not working. We need people, members of the public, to go through this and say, actually, that doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense, can you please work? We need realistic feedback, because asking feedback from an officer who's already working in that context is not actually going to be really useful, I believe. But that would be my request, that we actually ask for feedback from members of the public who have nothing to do with the council.
Just, it may be that the starting point is, the point that Patsy raised, that even as members, maybe our input first, and then we can get something that makes sense. The head of service has also said to me as well, with regards to the school meals, there will be a report that should go to education, probably September, October, but we can bring back that report to a future meeting here as well to discuss as well.
Sorry, thank you for those comments. Yes, and I think this is part of the development of this process, that we feed to other committees, and the Education Committee receives a lot of detail and information regarding school meals, and I think that data and that information needs to come here to give you that same level of ability to scrutinise what others, and you may not be party to that. So we will arrange to have that come forward. In relation to the plan, it is our intention to bring based on our previous discussions, our last committee, around the development information, so that will come to our next committee, giving greater performance information, giving further clarity within the commercial development plan. So that is on the work schedule to be brought forward to you for that purpose.
Just on that one, Ronnie, that was something that was raised at the EEI. It's come back, so that's come to the next meeting of enterprise and sub, and then it'll go back to the EI for ratification.
Thank you for the clarification on that.
John?
Thanks, Chair. Just on page 11, the first bullet point, termination of contract with transfers means a reduction of the workforce by 16. How many of them is ERVS, and has any of them been redeployed within the council? And I think one of the problems we do have here is every member doesn't sit in the EI committee.
Yeah. I'll get either Mike or head of service, but I believe all were voluntary. But
through you, Chair, as it says there, the contract came to its natural end at that period of time. The council is operating its ERVS opportunity. Applicants applied, and I think we're sitting 15 at this time. People have made their inquiry, and they have went via the ERVS approach at this time.
Graham?
Yeah, that just raises something which I wasn't going to talk about, but seeing as how John's asked the question, were none of those staff eligible for TUPE transfer?
Again, Chair, I'm very mindful of the contractual requirements. There was no TUPE on this issue because this was a subcontract arrangement. We weren't the primary party. That primary party is transferred to Transport Scotland.
I seem to be acquiring a way of asking awkward questions. I very apologise. Well, I don't apologise for it because somebody's got to ask them. I forgot what I was going to ask about to start with. But, it's fogging up the brain. If you look at page 1, building and maintenance services, roads maintenance services made a loss of 800, or didn't achieve £877,000 of income. That's one way of, another way of putting it. I understand that is the case, that it was due to work that didn't come through. Is that work going to come through in this current year? And if not, or how do we budget for that? I mean, how do we absorb that? What happens to that money? I mean, that's 877,000 we didn't get. It's a loss to the corporate council. How does that accounted for in the books, firstly? And I'll come back to if somebody could answer that. And will that work actually come through in the future?
I think through you, Chair, the answer I would provide Councillor Nicholl is that we have spent a considerable amount of time working with colleagues across the council in relation to the capital projects, and working with the Section 95 officer to ensure that these projects will be committed and flow through that process. My colleagues within the building services and our financial officer, we have set up monitoring to ensure that what has been programmed with due start dates and anticipated spends will all be recorded. And if there are any concerns or issues going forward in the future, these will be flagged up at an early juncture with the appropriate departments to ensure that work is either redressed to ensure the deliverability, or there are other actions taken. So the comment I would say is we have put in a considerable amount of effort to ensure that sadly what happened last year does not happen again this incoming year and years going forward.
Come back.
Yeah. So we don't know if that work's going to happen.
Yes. We have a substantial programme and activity of capital works that are on schedule to be delivered this year in line with colleagues across the council's budgets and aspirations.
So does that mean that those two sectors should show a profit of 877,000 extra this year?
Caroline, yeah.
There are several elements to these shortfalls. If we take the roads maintenance first, roads maintenance didn't actually produce a loss. It produced less of a surplus than it was expected to do. that budgeted surplus was, as we've said before, pretty much unrealistic. It was based on wind farm developments and new housing developments. Therefore, in that respect, we can't capture it up because they aren't. The economy might turn up and we might do wind farms, but we're not going to be doing them, and we probably aren't going to be doing them. We haven't got the workforce now, so we're never going to do that. So that won't be captured. So that bit is sunk. There's really nothing within the roads maintenance that would recover that shortfall. Within building maintenance services, obviously there was two elements to this. One was with respect to the loss on the external contracts, the police and fire going into a national contract, and the double billing in 16-17, which we had to pay back in 17-18. Those two elements will not reoccur. The police and fire have now gone into a national contract. We won't recover any money. We're not going to be doing any more work for them at this present time. And obviously the double billing was a one-off. In terms of the capital projects that were delayed, they will at some point come on stream, obviously, but it depends. It may be that the whole thing shuffles. So some projects that were due to have been done in 18-19 will be moved back into 19-20. So can't be certain that all of them will be produced, all of the projects that were scheduled for 17-18 will be done in 18-19. However, what we have done is, with our property and architectural services colleagues, identified very clearly those projects that are going to be done in 18-19. I produced a budget based on those capital sums, and we are monitoring in detail the performance against those specific projects as to, have they started on time? Are they progressing on time? Are they going to finish in the year? And we'll be able to very clearly identify if there's any slippage much quicker. So what we will not do this year on that basis is have an unreported slippage on capital projects.
I think, Graham, the important thing for me going forward is that the work that's been done by Paul Garrett and the team that will go to both policy and resources and to EEI is crucial. And I think a lot of these issues, the issues that probably this department finds itself in, that sometimes is no fault of their own, if we can actually improve that. So, like, for example, that building maintenance know that, the projects that they're to do internally, they know they're going to be able to do them in that financial year. And let's not have this reliance on the last 2 months, kind of like fingers crossed a little bit, that we hope that we get the go-ahead to get these projects done. If we're ready, if this department's ready to do the work, then we've got to make sure that work can be done in the time scale it was meant to be. So I think a lot of it will hang on the recommendations that come, and hopefully most members will get a sight of that, either if they're on policy and resources or EEI. But a lot of these issues should be addressed through that.
Could I come back, Chair? There was another point which I remembered. We're 4.5 months into this financial year, and as of yet, we've no indication as to how we're doing. And we need to be keeping on top of things. We need to know exactly where we are with regard to budgets, and are we going to run big deficit? Because as a corporate council, we cannot afford big deficits. We have to be making. If we're going to make money, we need to make money. Otherwise, but we need to have a handle on the thing right from day one, so that we as an enterprise and subcommittee can keep track of where we are as regards to budgets and in comparison to the actual facts.
I think you're right in relation to more than any other kind of service committee, etc., because we've got the trading arm that we need that. I think, again, this is one of the things that has to come out of the report, and part of the delay for this year's budgets, etc., is because of the work that's being done that is going to be subject of a report to policy and resources. So there has been a delay this year, but really as well, we take on board this fact, that that this subcommittee and Enterprise and DG is different from the rest of the council, and we do need to have better and more accurate figures and more timious figures as well. So that's something that we can note. Any more? We've given this quite a good thrash, and based on the fact that we haven't had enough time to actually get the detailed information that was maybe hoped for when it was asked that this report was brought back from from EEI to the sub. But going forward, I hope what I want to do is if we look at the recommendations, first of all, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 are all for noting. So if we note those, but what I would like to do is, and we're just looking at maybe a form of words to kind of capture what we would like to see going forward. And we don't note this, we agree this recommendation. So based on that, I think Claire's got a form of words.
I've got a form of words, Chair. Agree in order to provide further opportunity for consideration of finance and business performance matters to receive regular reports to the subcommittee for scrutiny.
I think the reason why I'm saying finance and business performance is that we still ultimately have to provide the financial information to our parent committee, the EEI, and wherever we can, we will provide the latest financial information. So we should get a regular report every meeting. If for some reason the timing doesn't work out with that, we will still bring forward a business performance report as well. So we will get either one, but hopefully it should work out that we get a financial report at every enterprise and sub.
Yeah, could I just say, define regular, once a year's regular, but if we can get it
every meeting,
once every meeting,
every meeting,
that's fine.
every meeting, because we can cover it with either finance or a business performance. Okay, members happy with that? Okay. Any other business? Which don't have any other business, but we do have. Yeah, in a public sense we don't. But item 5 is to consider adoption of resolution to exclude the public from the meeting in terms of section 50A and paragraph 10 of part 1 of schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. We agreed? So we need to leave the room.